What's going on, Flicks Talkers? Welcome back to another review. And I know when you clicked on this, you said, David, what are you doing? This movie is so old. And I understand in movie culture, just movies come out daily, weekly, and yeah, I'm about a month behind. But guess what? It took me about a month to watch this movie. So over the holiday season, guys, right before Christmas, a couple days before, everyone kept telling me, David, do you see The Irishman? Even Jeremy put this on his top movies of 2019, The Irishman. I had to see it. They kept beating it into my head, and it was such a busy time for me with Christmas, with the new year. We finally got to sit down, and like I said, it took me a couple of days, but my girlfriend and I watched The Irishman by Martin Scorsese, and man, I'm so glad I watched it. It was a fantastic 3.5 hours. I would not narrow it down at all. But before we get into this review, guys, please make sure you guys hit that thumbs up if you guys appreciate videos like this, and make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe and bell notification for more content like this. All right, let's just jump right into this review. So like I said, this film was directed by Mr. Martin Scorsese, someone who is a phenomenal veteran filmmaker in the game. He's been around so long, guys. I think most of us were first introduced to his works by Goodfellas and Casino, but it goes back even further to Raging Bull and Mean Streets. If you guys have not seen Mean Streets, I feel like that's a very, very underrated, kind of swept under the rug. Only real Martin Scorsese or De Niro fans, for that matter, know about Mean Streets, and it's such a good film, and people probably watching it today are like, that's just a very, very basic movie, but it kind of goes underneath, you know, the whole surface, and it's more about character development, and it builds this whole world of what these characters have become 40, 50 years later, and it's really phenomenal to see all these guys come back, like De Niro, like Pesci, and more notably, in this film, I thought was a standout, Al Pacino. And it's so great to see him kind of just come back to movies, because I feel like he's had a real absence in cinema as far as being in the forefront. But, you know, with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I know he did a lot of straight to DVD releases, but, you know, with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino last year, and then this movie, The Irishman, and then he's actually coming out in a new Amazon series that I'm really, really looking forward to called Hunters. That's coming out next month in February. So we see that he's doing more work, and I'm so glad all these guys came back together. And the story is that Joe Pesci did not want to do this film. He did not want to return back to film, but you know, it took him a couple of pushes, but he actually was able to do this film, and I'm so glad he did. So let's go over what The Irishman is about. So The Irishman starts out with Mr. Robert De Niro playing Frank Sheeran, narrating his life and narrating the times in, I believe it was the mid 60s or early 60s, and these are all around the times of the Kennedys and their days in office, as well as Mr. Fidel Castro in Cuba. So there's a lot of things going on around that time, guys, and kind of him and his cronies' hand in all that political stuff that was going on around that time, as well as them having to shake down a lot of characters. So it's just kind of Frank's rise to power. So with Martin Scorsese films, you get a lot of this theme of mobsters and stuff, but in this one, it just seems, because of the 3-hour and 30-minute runtime, you really got in depth with these characters, and you really felt for what they were all going through, you know, even their spouses or their sons or daughters, and you know, there was a lot of elaboration on that, and I think that's what held my interest. There is some action, guys, you know, certain spurts of energy, but it is more character development. You fall in love with these characters, you really care about what happens and what they end up doing, you know, later on in the movie, and that's what I felt for more. I had more of the feels watching The Irishman. Now, a huge chunk of what the trailer was even talking about was Jimmy Hoffa, and that's played by Al Pacino, and I thought he did a great job. I thought he looked the part, even though he was a little older, I think, than the Jimmy Hoffa of that time. I thought the mannerisms were pretty great, and he was trying to pull off an accent that was a little different than the Al Pacino that we know, but that's totally fine. And he was pretty much ahead of the union, and he was someone that was definitely for the working man, the common man, and it's awesome to see that he did that. But behind the scenes, he had a lot of muscle that had mob ties, or that were definitely into shakedowns and doing things illegally. So that all ended up catching up with him, guys. So a huge central part of the film is dealing with that and the people behind the scenes that had to go through those situations in in real life. Now, also in the forefront, you get Mr. Joe Pesci, who's playing Russell Bafalino, and he did an amazing job. I think they actually did a couple of prosthetics to make him look older than what he was. By the way, there is a lot of time jumps in this film, guys, and you get to see a lot of de-aging with Robert De Niro's character, and that was totally fine, but at first you do notice it. It's like the first time that you probably saw Paul Walker, as the stand-in Paul Walker when they CGI'd his face. I think that might have been in Fast and the Furious 7 at the end, because he did tragically die before they finished the film. So I think you kind of notice it more in the eyes. My girlfriend and I kept looking like there's something going on with the eyes, and I think they haven't perfected the de-aging software yet 100%, but the eyes you can tell. But after like maybe 30 minutes of seeing De Niro as a younger De Niro, like 20 years ago De Niro, you kind of just lose yourself in the character and you don't notice it that much. It's not like Gemini Man last year with Will Smith where you really do notice it. This one was very, very fluid, and I just kind of lost myself in what was going on in the situations. You do notice it a little bit more when Robert De Niro is kind of running around, because he does look slower and you're like, wait a minute, his face doesn't look that old, but his body is definitely moving a lot slower. We also get some amazing co-hosts in this, guy. So Harvey Keitel, Ray Romano, Bobby Cannavale, who, man, I still fanboy to this day. We went out to LA to an IKEA and we saw Bobby right there. Well, I saw Bobby, I noticed him, I'm like, I think that's that guy. And we locked eyes and he looked at me like, yeah, I'm that guy. We also get Jesse Plemons, who's playing Jimmy Hoffa's character. I always love this guy from Breaking Bad, Game Night. I've seen him in so many things, guys, and I think he's an amazing actor. I always call him the mini Matt Damon because he really looks like it. He's just a great actor, and he has a huge pivotal play in this movie. So, much kudos to him. He's always a great, great actor in the films that I've seen him in. Now, Martin Scorsese is definitely one of those directors where whatever he says about anything in the media, guys, and you know what I'm talking about, he has such an eye for film. I really value his opinion 100%, whether I agree with it or not. But I really respect the man in the fact that his body of work speaks volumes. He definitely has an eye for cinematography. A lot of these shots were just beautiful, and it really set the tone for what was going on, whether it was a zoom in, whether it was a long pan shot, whether it was a close-up of someone's face. It all invoked emotion on what was going on in the scene or what was to come. So even though we get these jump cuts kind of going back 20 years, back 10 years, jumping to the present, where Robert De Niro is kind of narrating his life and the situations that are happening or that have happened, this movie was just so interesting to people that really appreciate those mob or just biographical type of dramatic films. I think you're really going to like it if you guys are into that. And I really do hope this comes to physical, because I would love to add it to my collection right next to Casino and Goodfellas. Now, if you guys don't know the true life story of what happened to Mr. Jimmy Hoffa, just Google it. I'm not going to spoil it for you if you guys have no clue of what I'm talking about, because these are events that happened 40, 50 years ago. So these are things that are cemented in history, and just Google it if you guys want, or just watch the movie. But the ending of this film for me was so sad, just to kind of see what ended up happening to everybody. But it was unnecessary, because evil ends up coming back to evil men, and that's just kind of what it was. So overall, without making this review too long, The Irishman, I gotta give a solid 5 out of 5, saying I had no gripes with it whatsoever. 3 hours and 30 minutes, that's totally fine. I got immersed in this world so much of, like I said, around the Kennedy Castro era, and it just really sucked me in, and it felt like they did utilize this whole budget of, I think, $160 million, not only for the de-aging software, but making the whole setting around them really feel like, to that timepiece, to their suits, to everything that was around them, to the buildings they were walking in, the cars they were driving in. It was a fantastic history capsule capturing that in film, and I gotta give Mr. Martin Scorsese credit for doing that, and I can't wait to see more of his future works. Alright guys, did you appreciate this review? If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe and bell notification for more content like this. And if you have seen The Irishman, please leave it in the comments below your thoughts, and let's get a dialogue going. Alright guys, until the next review, I'm gone. Peace.